A lot of people want to rotationally graze, move their cows frequently, but it can be super time consuming, super confusing, or it can be easy. And that's why this guy's here. Today we're talking to Eli from Ken Cove. We're going to be talking about rotationally grazing, making it easy. You got some tips for us, Eli?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Let's get into it. Today, Eli is here with us. He is a Savory accredited professional when it comes to grazing, forage, pasture. We'll have more information about Eli below if you're interested in his services. Let's start off at the top. Why should somebody rotationally graze in the first place? Why not just, you know what, put your cows out in your field, not worry about it?
Sure, I think there's a lot of reasons and they all kind of play into one another. One thing would be we're utilizing all the forage here. If this was just set stock or open grazed, kind of like you and I, we pick our favorite restaurants to go to. Like if we had our choice, we're gonna go there.
Yeah.
Cattle kind of do the same thing. They're gonna pick their favorite pockets, their favorite shade place. They're gonna hang out. They're not always gonna go to every corner of the pasture. So by us controlling and being the fence, we're kind of forcing them to utilize everything more evenly. What that also does is it forces them out of those attraction sites like shade, out from under the trees, out from the water sources, gets their manure and urine spread out over the pasture. So you get a more even fertilizer, basically.
Right.
And then as we move, we're also moving them away from that previous fertilizer that maybe has flies and some other activity going on, and an abundant list of other benefits.
The homesteader or the small farmer who has a full-time job has got to buy hay, he's got to buy feed, keep his animals in good condition. If we rotationally graze, what's the end benefit to them?
I think for the homesteader community, one of the things that I think of right away is sometimes smaller acreage. You know, so we're not the big farm with hundreds of acres.
Yeah.
So how do we utilize every piece of the land? And we can do that with very flexible equipment. At the same time, we're saving on some feed costs. We're putting the best forage in front of the animals as we move. So that's going to be a better benefit at the end, whether you're butchering or whatever you're looking to do there. So you're going to save some time and setup because you have really flexible equipment. You're going to be able to utilize your property. You're going to end up with a great product at the end. So
saving time, saving money for a better quality product, definitely something you want to do in your homestead. What's your goal when it comes to rotational grazing, Eli? How quickly, how often do you want to move animals?
I think you need to set that very specifically for what you can do, both land-wise, animal-wise, time-wise. For me personally, we're moving just about every day on maybe 0.2 acres, and there's all kinds of formulas. You can go crazy.
Yeah.
You can totally nerd out over that stuff if you want to.
And Eli does. You can follow him on his social.
But just make it match your context and what you can manage. It'll become pretty apparent to you if you're pushing the animals. You're going to see more trying to get through that fence. You're going to see them reaching further under the fence. So there's a lot of different ways you can break it down, but just keep it simple on yourself. Start larger and work smaller and find that sweet spot rather than starting tight and having chaos and animals get out or whatever. You know, start large and then zero in on that sweet spot.
And I like what you said. You mentioned pushing the animals and pushing yourself. If it doesn't make sense for you in your life to rotationally graze daily, finding a period of time that does work, any kind of movement going to be better than none?
Yeah, any kind of movement that you can. Typically, the ideal, I will give you some generics. I don't like to speak in generics, but typically the more dense, the tighter the area, the smaller the paddock, the more subdivisions you can make, the better impact you're going to get on the soil if we can control the time factor. You want to get as dense as you can and move as frequently as you can. So then you just extrapolate that to match your time schedule, your labor demands, your family life, whatever you have going on. But that way you can utilize as much, you're spreading out, you're really feeding the soil, you're keeping the cattle moving, keeping them happy.
So if you are a person who's been grazing nonstop, you have a fenced in field and you just let them go, even splitting it into halves or quarters would be better than a full open graze.
Yes, sir.
So just finding that sweet spot that works with you. Our life with this system, it is literally a 10-minute move.
Yeah.
And I want to show everybody how. So let's grab some reels and Eli, you can show us whatever tricks you got up your sleeve.
Sounds good.
I was worried when you guys were coming today, there was not going to be any forage to show. It's been killer dry this season, and we have already grazed this entire field once.
Yeah.
But I'm actually really excited.
Yeah, no, I think it looks good, and like especially this patch over here, I'm seeing orchard grass, fescue, some timothy mixed with clover and whatnot.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, no, I think it looks good. This is one of the reasons why we want to talk about rotational grazing. You already made one pass through here. We're heading into a dry spell. We're into August now, which typically things slow down for us.
Yeah.
But this was already set aside and the cows are off it. So it's almost like we've been unaffected. You know, we definitely have forage here to eat.
Yeah, there's a lot for them. And actually going forward, despite there being a serious drought, we got a ton for them. So why don't we move them? That way they're happy, Eli.
Okay.
Eli does this on his farm every day. So let's learn some tricks. If somebody wants to get started rotationally grazing, simple, not a lot of, you know, stuff to work with, what's the best tools to get started with, Eli?
Well, we've got some of them here today. The quickest and easiest things to gather up would be step-in posts. They work in most soil conditions, especially with a metal spike on the foot. Step-in posts, they have multiple clip settings for different heights or different livestock you might be working with. You want electric twine, preferably braided. It's going to be stronger, going to have a little bit better conductivity. And then a reel to make your life easier when you go to collect it back up. So
I can guarantee, because we used to use sticks and that was not great. Wrapping the stick did not work well. No,
So,
reels are the way to go.
we brought you a reel.
Ooh, presents.
We brought you a new one.
Look at that, fancy new model. I like it.
This is the new one from Strainright. This is the Blackhawk model.
Cool.
One of the things that we'll feature with you, it's got these triple hooks for mounting to your high tensile wire.
Oh,
So
perfect.
it won't be floppy, it'll be nice and
Yeah.
straight. So
That's actually something that's really nice, because I've been hanging my other reels with the single loop off of the high tensile. I got a couple of them right now, you can see, and they get floppy and then they get stuck. I'm excited to try this. So maybe before we get started, if we could spool this up, because I want to put this to work right now. This is great.
you want to transfer twine from
Yeah,
this
let's
one?
do that. Yep. Just like this, tie it to that.
Yep, go
Little
for it.
shoelace knot, little square knot. Now, you guys have on your channel an entire series you've been working on, kind of like every step in this process. What can people learn right now if they go over to the Ken Cove channel?
Oh man, they can see kind of this whole process, getting a new reel set up, different handles, different reels for different applications, how you might want to use them in what situations. We really like our Zammr handles, which I think we displayed with you here the one time. But then just grazing techniques as far as step-in post, getting things set up. We're also going to have some.
That so it wasn't so noisy.
We're also going to have some electric netting stuff.
Oh, that's nice, because the electric netting, that stuff can be super helpful and super frustrating. So I'm looking forward to this series. I want to learn some tips. If you guys would like us to cover netting on this channel with Eli, get the Ken Cove crew back, let me know in the comments below. What animals do you want to see us try to contain with the netting? All right, so we're going to tie a handle on. As far as handles go on your reels, Eli, I know there's insulated. I have both insulated and non-insulated handles.
Yeah.
Any preference as to what somebody should work with? You mentioned that Zammr handle, which we've shown on the channel before. It's really nice.
It'll come with an insulated handle, especially this new reel. But I do like the Zammr handle because it gives you the option of insulated or electric hook. So whatever you need to do,
that's
setting
a
up.
really, really nice feature.
I like that.
Yep.
It's lightweight. It's really easy to use.
We'll have links below to all the gear that you see in this video. And of course, we'll have links to Ken Cove. They were partnered with us on this project, on this video. And the best thing about Ken Cove is not only do they provide the gear, but guys like Eli, who are literally out moving their cows before they go to work in the morning, are on the other end of the phone to help you out with your questions. So if you'd like to get a system designed, set up, if you're not sure where to start, give them a call. They can help you out, get you everything you need to get started. We're able to move these cows every day in less than 10 minutes. And that's 100% thanks to the design that we came up with working with you guys, which basically is structured around having a high tensile perimeter that is electrified. I turned it off at the moment, but this is normally hot. How does this help somebody do a very easy move, Eli? Why is this so important to what we're doing every day?
Well, this is really nice because it acts as the framework or the bookends. So your perimeter is already done. You have that safety net in case somebody does get out. They get in the wrong paddock, they get ahead of you, they backtrack, whatever. They're still contained, but then it's just plug and play. We can hook a handle on this end, attach it at the other end. Done.
And this, I mean, you can see there's a little, these high tensile wires, there's a little bit of give to them, but they do hold the weight of these geared reels, which we worked here for years. Before we had a high tensile perimeter, we couldn't use geared reels because we couldn't hang them on anything. So we were using a 1-to-1 reel. This is what, if you have a full-time job, if you have to do this in just a couple minutes a day, this is the secret to that.
Sure.
But now I know you, on areas in your farm, you don't have a high tensile on the whole thing. Someone can still rotationally graze without a high tensile perimeter.
Absolutely. Might just want to brace up in those areas where you're hooking the gate handle or where you're terminating the reel. There's a couple tricks you can do with step-in posts to do that. You can even jump into T-posts if you want to, just knowing that they're a metal post in the ground and you have a grounding issue if something ends up touching. But that would even be stout enough to support the weight of a reel.
I remember when we were at your farm, you showed us too, you used some different reels for those kind of situations. You had the Kiwitech, which were a lightweight reel. So we're not showing that in this video, but if you guys would like to learn more about how to do rotational grazing without the high tensile, we could cover that in the future. But we do have the high tensile, so show us, how would you actually pick, Eli, how much to give the cows? What's a good guideline for space?
At first, it'll be a little bit of a guessing game.
They're done waiting. The cows are done waiting. They're like, come on, guys, quit talking. We got to eat. Let's get them fenced in, and then you can explain how to pick the right size.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, we're going to put you in go mode right there.
Awesome.
I'll trade you.
I'll spool this out, and I'll meet you
Okay.
at the other end. Capture this guy. Naughty cows, naughty cows.
Then I just like to capture it in the right hook. Set your distance. And give it a little bit of a locking twist so that it catches more of that twine within the finger. It's harder for that twine to bounce out. So I just give it a little bit extra twist. So now with spacing for cattle, I like to do around 20 to 30 feet depending. If you have sheep in the mix, you might need to cut that in half or go a little bit closer just to help reinforce the fence.
And what about on the post itself too, Eli?
Post itself, for cattle by themselves, well, for me it's right above my kneecap. It's going to change for other people, but this would be for cattle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7, depending on height and size, is pretty good for just cattle by themselves. If you have multi-species, you might be running 2 or 3 strands. I know for my sheep, I use this second clip as my bottom strand to try to prevent them from nosing underneath something, and then you can kind of fill in the middle if needed.
We ran our cows in the front with our pigs and our sheep behind them. Most of our cows respected one piece of twine, no problem. The minute we threw pigs in there, we needed a second. Some of our sheep needed a third. When we were running sheep, it was top, middle, and bottom. Now our sheep are feeder lambs. We don't have a breeding stock here that learn over time, so they're pretty problematic, and that's why they're now hanging in the freezer. But as far as like rotationally grazing with multi-species, we actually did this whole entire field with cows, pigs, sheep, and we followed with the chicken tractors. So these methods with more reels, more twine, can go multi-species, and really did an awesome job at totally using up the pasture we had here in the springtime, which was really, really nice. All right, now this thing is fancy. So you got to show me, how do we handle this? Because normally I'm used to, at this point, setting my brake, reeling it in nice and tight, and then taking this and hooking it on like that. And that works okay, but sometimes if we want to like lengthen some part of this and we loosen this and we try to work off of it, it's kind of a mess, right? this thing I see has attacked that problem head on. Show me how this works, Eli.
Yeah, so this reel has an extra set of hooks on the handle frame. So all you have to do is set it in that first hook, go under the bolt, and pop it in that next hook. And now it is locked in there. Yeah, that's pretty helpful.
That is awesome, because I could actually, the reason we worked from that direction to here is so we didn't have to mess with the spool that was, you know, like getting stuck. But I can see right now if we loosen that and work with this, that's not coming off. There we go. That's staying on, we're not getting stuck. And if the cattle come and mess with it, I can't tell you how many times with just this hook, I've come and found it knocked to the ground because a cow bounced it. This thing's so much tighter. Oh man, that's awesome. I love that. That's a huge upgrade. Now I got to replace my other 6 spools here. I love that. Thank you guys for throwing that in, because that's a sweet product right there. That took us what? I mean, we were filming, it took us a couple minutes, but didn't take us 5 minutes.
Right.
Normally what I like to do is I have a couple extra rows so that the back row now becomes the front. Is that what you do at your farm too?
Leapfrog it over to the front. Yep.
That way the next morning when it's time to rush off to work, all you have to do is let the cows in, which actually we do have to let the other cows in. Naughty Mister here let himself in, but let's let them in, and then we can set up the next paddock for tomorrow. I got you here, might as well work you, right?
That's right.
Sometimes I get asked, why don't you just have, you know, permanent fencing, divide this so you don't even have to stretch twine each day? Why is it good to have this adjustable in paddock size, and then how do we decide how much to give them each day?
Sure. I just think for function's sake, you can still drive anything you need to through here without all kinds of interior fence. Second, like we mentioned, we're kind of in some dry conditions. We're in August, so there's less forage volume. So maybe in the spring, you know, you could have grazed half the width of this strip because there was so much. But now there's not as much, and we need a little bit wider space. So to gauge the size of how much area you're giving is a little bit of a guessing game. I can't really give a generic formula for that, just because it depends what you're going for, how much you want to take, how much you want to leave, the kind of animal, the species, all that kind of stuff. The advice I would give, and maybe I said it earlier on, is to start larger and work your way smaller and find that sweet spot. So I can see the strips that you guys, it looks like some pretty good impact and disturbance there. This one is a little bit tighter than maybe yesterday's. That's going to be fine.
So if people are watching and they're like, you know, what am I going for as far as yesterday's paddock to today's? Do you want to see it like it was mown by a lawnmower? Do you want to see take half, leave half? How do they even decide at what point to graze and when to move?
I think what everybody should understand from the get-go is that grazing is a game of time. Not so much the animals or necessarily how much of what we have going on here, but time. Time that animals are exposed to a paddock or an area is going to be the biggest factor. So rest and recovery plays into time. That's the other half of rotational grazing. Why we should be getting more into that is because we're building rest and recovery like we talked about. This had time to regrow. It didn't have animal impact. It wasn't getting overgrazed while we were off doing other things. So because of that, if you need a quicker turnaround, a quicker regrowth, then you probably want to take less, because you need it to start growing and put up that volume again, put up that leaf so that you can come back quicker. If you can build in the rest and recovery period for a longer period of time, maybe you want to hit it hard, you know, kind of shed off some of those roots under the soil, feed the soil with that and let it grow back from new energy. We need to understand that when plants are trying to grow from the root energy is that vulnerable time of when overgrazing actually happens. You know, maybe we hit this last paddock really hard, but that might not be overgrazing if we got off it soon enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can stick around in a paddock for too many days and the grass is trying to regrow and we keep pruning it. and that's overgrazing. We could complete a loop and come back to it while it's still trying to regrow. It's not fully ready yet, and that's overgrazing.
I know one of the reasons you do what you do professionally, Eli, with helping people answer these questions is it is complicated, right? And you can't apply too many rules. It's more of an art than a science, right? Or maybe it's a mix of both. But are there any rules you can give us as to like overgrazing, what to avoid? Is there a certain number of days that, you know, to play it safe, someone who's a beginner at this should build into their design or their system?
And I think this is something that you could go out and do some research in your own field really quick, even if it's just mowing your grass. Mow it, graze it, come back out with a meter stick or whatever you need to do and gauge like on what day that grass starts to regrow. Okay, so like if it's after 4 days you notice some growth, you know that you have 4 days to spend in this paddock before you would technically be overgrazing it.
So the key is to mow it with your livestock and then move them before it starts to regrow. If it starts to regrow and you're still there, that's a problem.
This is something to look for too with the leader follower style. Like we were talking multi-species, you know, cows, sheep, pigs, chickens, whatever. Some people just create a train, and that can be a really cool effect on the landscape. But what might end up happening is that lagging species, maybe it's chickens, they're pecking and pulling at grass that was already grazed 10 days ago. And now we didn't overgraze it with the cattle, but we did with the chickens because we're too far behind. So timing is definitely the key. I'll throw out this one too. Like looking for a point on the grass. If this was grazed, if I just graze that, it's going to be blunt and flat like that. If I come back and everything still looks flat, it hasn't recovered.
Not ready.
You know, nothing's grown back.
So the fact that we're looking around here and we're seeing points, this had enough time. And actually, just the process, what we designed here with help of you guys when we put this together was about a 60-day in its worst, right, in its most drought kind of, most drought conditions. If we could get about 60 days where we moved one of these a day and then went all the way back to the beginning, we tried to build in that much of a buffer. Of course, we also have outside of the fence we can graze, other parts of the property we can graze too, so we can build that in too.
And it's something that you might match with the season. Obviously spring, we've got grass just exploding up here.
It was a great spring.
So you might move really quickly. You might get to this time of the year where it'd be easy to get ahead of yourself and hard to return to something that's fully recovered, so you might have to slow down. So that'd be the other tip, is try to match with the seasons as far as what's going on growth rate.
Cool. All right, that sun, you can feel it is baking down. Obviously, when you're rotationally grazing, there's a couple more things you got to consider that do make it a little bit more complicated. Sun means you need shade and water. Any advice on how with daily moves or more frequent moves, everyone can make sure they have both for their cows?
For me, personally, I like to make it so that if a machine breaks down, I can still get it done. So I try to make things as portable as possible, as lightweight as possible. You've obviously got a wagon shade here. I just finished a wagon shade.
I saw on Instagram this morning. That was a nice looking wagon.
So water and shade are hugely important, especially for us. We've got the Highlands that have shaggy hair. You know, hot summer months are not their time to shine, so we have to do something. Tree planting is another great thing to invest in the future of your property as kind of a standing shade and to help diversify your homestead a little bit even more. So portability, keep it lightweight, make sure you can move it. Don't depend on equipment too much. Sometimes it's necessary, but make sure in an emergency you could get it done by hand.
For water, Eli, I know what you do. We've been to Mack Farm, and I keep mentioning having seen your thing. We do have a video you can check out where we went and saw Eli's daily work and what he does at his farm. I know you have a nice creek, and you run a gas-powered pump. You're pumping nice, cold, refreshing water with that big heavy-duty pump out to your cows. You just pump it in
I've got 3 of the larger, well, I got 2 of the larger and 1 of the smaller, just for any calves or sheep that are getting pushed out of the way by somebody else. And we'll just top those off. This time of year, we might come out 2 or 3 times just to make sure everything is filled up. But
we don't have a creek, we don't have a stream. One of the hardest things about our setup here was water up on the top of the hill. So what we've been doing is we've been catching rainwater because my well is not in great shape. We've been catching off our pole barn. We have 4 IBC totes, 300 gallons each. One good thunderstorm, I'll fill up 900 plus gallons of water, and we'll take them up on the forks, gravity fed from up here. We'll put them down and gravity feed water into our different Rubbermaid troughs. So having that cold water and some shade has been a big game changer, like you said, especially the Highlands. I notice my mini jerseys are pretty heat tolerant. They shine in these hot months. The Highlands need the shade and the water, and it's important to have it for your animals. So something to consider. One more thing while you're here, Eli, I wanted you to explain to us, when we move the cows now, we should be learning from when they move what we're looking at here. In this paddock where they were actually here for 3 days. I've been doing, because as you mentioned, stuff is growing slower, I've been doing 3-day moves. Plus it's the end of summer and I'm getting a little lazy. So what have I done to this paddock? What do you see here? What does this tell us about how I handle this? What should I consider for my next move? If we look close to the pasture here.
So right here, pop quiz for you. Lots of manure up here at the top. Why is that?
Shade. Shade and water.
We have an attraction site. Whatever your attraction site is, that's where the manure and urine is going to be. So pretty even as far as the grasses are concerned. We have some horse nettle and stuff sticking up. So depending on what you wanted to level or eradicate, we could have done smaller to wipe everything out. We could have gone larger to allow more residual left on the grasses. I don't see any concerns for bare ground, which would be a red flag. You know, if you're observing moving and you're creating tons of bare ground, we might need to reevaluate that.
Obviously, like where the shade wagon was, there's some there, like you mentioned, because we have a what is it, attraction?
A concentrated area and attraction site.
But other than that, no bare ground. A lot of this nettle. I would like to see less of this nettle. Does that mean more frequent, smaller moves?
We could do more density.
So if I, instead of doing 1 move a day, if I wanted to come out in the evening and give them a second half, or more animals. And I did notice this year, we went from the dairy and beef cattle all together. We got a really good graze for what I wanted. I wanted to see just a nice mow. As soon as we lost a lot of those animals, we got less. Is there a density to shoot for as far as like, a minimum size herd to get a good graze?
You're gonna hate me. So many variables. There's just so many variables.
No rules.
Context is just so important for all that stuff. It just varies so much with what you have growing. This could be another case for multi-species stuff. Even if the cattle leave something behind, even at a good density, maybe something else comes and takes those leaves off. I'm sorry, that's my cop-out answer. Too many variables.
That's why it's really good for people who are interested in learning more about this. First off, when it comes to their setup, give Ken Cove a call. And then the other thing is, if they want to learn more about how to figure out the details, no rules, but all context, what do you have, Eli, that people can follow you at?
Sure, you can come on over to Mack Farms, or Regentsylvania is our hub name for savory. We'd be happy to talk about specifics and grazing plans and holistic management, things like that. Try to understand your context, where you're coming from, and see if we can get you in a system or some management that really has a good impact on your homestead. So
I can't say enough good things. We've been following all the content you guys are making with Ken Cove, Mack Farms. If people are moving other animals with, like, for example, netting. We didn't cover netting on this video. You guys just made a great video they should check out. Click right there. Ken Cove's guide to netting.
We're moving sheep at my new property from one net to the next area.
I got no answers there. Go to Eli and Ken Cove for that.